And so the being is neutral. The being is simplicity. The being just is. Simple being, perfect peace, pure presence, and openness and equanimity, and a oneness with all that is as what is. Mm. Mm. So this moment just as it is just to be here, be the being, come into remembrance of simple being. Remember who you are. Remember that you are not the mind or the body. You are not the story, the roles. You are not the thoughts. You are not the protections, the contractions. You are not the conditionings. You are not the name or the form. And yes, it is true that in the wholeness, that everything is included. But we only come to discover the truth of who we are, the truth of what is, through really recognizing what we are not. Because as we open to being the being and this true essence nature and the surrender of life into life is discovered in the pure knowing, then everything we have believed ourselves to be will continue to attempt, let's say, to pull the attention. And it takes a vigilance as consciousness is remembering to rest absorbed in itself, fully conscious of its own purity, of its own innocence. The patterns of limitation will attempt to pull the attention, to keep the mind alive, and to keep the sense of the density of the protection that is known by the mind and is believed to be some kind of safety. And so we discover a deeper knowing, alive knowing of who we are, of what is true, through a vigilance to keep aware and to keep seeing through all that we are not, as it attempts to pull the attention into distraction, into egocentric patterning. So egocentric patterning is protection. It's learned protections. And these protections play out as various kinds of conditionings, very often as inferior, not good enough, not worthy. I am bad, I am wrong. But it also plays out in the appearance of superior ego. And this is a tricky one. And it's one that we want to illuminate, because superior ego is a robber. And it is superior ego that has the possibility of taking hold of any kind of clear seeing and dulling it and turning it into a me that's got something, and holding a kind of superiority. But superiority is also separation. The being is neutral. The true nature, divine wholeness, is utter humility and utter compassion, and of course a oneness that knows no second. So this unfolding is an unfolding out of separation into a oneness of being life living itself. Consciousness remembering to rest absorbed in itself until the absorption is so deep that it disappears back into its own source, which is utter pure humility, a one with no second. So this unfolding, remembering the being, is remembering the neutrality, the humility, the compassion of the wide open heart and the essence nature. That the true knowing knows nothing. The true knowing is a pure knowing, a pure knowledge, a pure intelligence that only knows itself. But it does not hold information, and it does not hold a sense of being someone that has got something, right? So we want to catch this superior ego, because it is a subtle way that inferior ego, the pattern of contraction, the great story of the human condition, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, it puts on a costume of superiority and says, it's okay, I've got this, I'm different, I'm special, right? I don't even want to know about that, right? It starts to tell itself a story, because in its deepest depths, it fears its unworthiness. And so it starts to tell itself, you're okay, you're good, you're better, the way you are is better, right? You've got this. So we want to have such an awareness of how this is separation. If there's anyone that imagines that they have got anything, then that is the mind imagining that it has got something and that it has done something in order to achieve something, that it is caught in its net. So the invitation would be to throw that right back into the ocean of bliss. Whatever you've caught in your big net, throw it right back in, because that is not the fish of divine wholeness. That is not the true bliss. That is not humility. And yet it is an incredible invitation to illuminate that pattern, that tender place that feels the need to create an armoring of separation where there is me and other. It's so obvious to create that separation of, well, I'm not worthy, I'm less than. The constant doubting, right? But the one that says, I'm better than, I'm more than, I don't need any of this. This is the one that we want to really be aware of when it pops up in our internal experience, because it comes with judgment, it comes with opinion, and it can be very subtle, but it's very destructive. It's cause and effect, it's karma. So if there's a collaborating with it and a playing into it, there will be an effect that will come around, right? So ego is always looking for allies. Ego is looking for someone to collaborate with, right? There's a constant wanting to collaborate, a constant wanting to get validation, a wanting to share the story in order to find collaborators with the story. But the ego patterning that's looking for collaborators is, of course, only looking to keep the sense of separation in place. And so the kindest invitation is to see this within yourself. And also, if you find that a companion is looking for collaboration, to see the pattern and not collaborate, but to invite the companion to recognize that if there's any thought about anyone else, any judgment of anyone else, any opinion of anyone else, that's an invitation to find that within yourself. And to notice, does the being have any opinion? Does the being have any judgment? Does the being need to be seen, to be heard, to be known? Does the being need anything? And the direct experience confirms, no, the being is neutral. The being is openness. The being is equanimity. The being is the simple presence, does not need anything. Part of these egocentric patternings are to compare, to judge, even in a way of imagining that you have any idea of what is happening for anyone else. Because you don't. Where you see a being moving through emotionality and releasing, what you're seeing is courage. What you're seeing is a letting go of resistance, right? So be aware of judging. And to know that when there is a judging, it's an invitation to discover something about yourself. It's not the story of what you're judging, right? It's always an invitation to discover something about yourself. So we're illuminating some traps here. We're illuminating some ways that the egocentric patterning, the protective patternings, can create traps, mind traps. The grace is that when we can see these traps and when we can illuminate these places within our own internal functioning, that we are coming closer to our true nature, because we are revealing and we are humbling away these conditionings and these places where we can get stuck. Now, the being loves to express itself. Truth loves to express itself, but it doesn't need to be heard, and it doesn't need to be seen, and it doesn't need to be validated, right? That's the mind that thinks it's had an experience, and the mind wants something out of that. Now, the being loves to express, but the being will only express where there is the openness. So we want to bring a light, a really bright light, to these subtle places of ego tendency, to tell itself a story of how well it's doing or what it's got. That somehow it wants to create some kind of separation. Well, now I'm better than the others, right? We want to illuminate this because there is only one. And wherever we are in this unfolding, we're on our way to oneness. We're on our way to remembrance. We're on our way to the remembrance of divine wholeness. And divine wholeness is utter, pure humility, pure, boundless compassion, unconditioned love. It does not judge. It does not need anything from anyone. It does not even see a second. It only knows itself. So we are in the process of this unfolding. So there are going to be plenty of opportunities for getting hooked, for getting caught. It is of no benefit in any way to create guilt or shame, because that is just another strategy, right? That's the inferior ego. Well, I'm doing it wrong. I did something wrong. I'm bad. You see? Inferior, superior, it's all the same, right? It just plays out with different qualities of thought. But it's all thought, and all thought is judgment in some way. Check with the being. Does the being have anything to say? The being doesn't even say, oh yes, I like this, I like that. It does not have a thing to say, it just is. And this is what we are in the process of remembrance of. It's a subtle protection, and sometimes not so subtle protection, to create division, separation, me and other. And it can be me and other that I'm less than, me and other that I'm better than. But we are in the process of seeing through all of that separation. All there is at this stage is consciousness. And we are in the presence of being, coming to be the consciousness. Remember being the consciousness. Before you had any sense of becoming someone, a character, a name, a story, before you imagined that you learned anything, before you imagined that you have a life that has any relevance, before you imagine that you have some kind of future, that you're here to create a legacy, or you're here with some goal, let go of all of it. It's all subtle ways of distracting from this moment, here now. Only life is living itself. You are not living this life. Life is living you, if we want to say it in any way, but you are not what you think you are. Life is living itself. Life is living you. You're being played, but you're not the character. You're life. You're the vitality of life. You're the aliveness of life. You're the flow of intelligence that knows how, that is ever wise, needs nothing, is utterly fulfilled in the knowing of itself. And the invitation of the moment is to check. Come to the being. Remember the simple essence nature. Feel the presence of being. Feel the freedom. Feel the emptiness, the openness, the spaciousness. Feel the light. The silence, the stillness, the simplicity of being. The being is neutral. The being is what is, just this, just like this. Not the person having an experience, just the being. And the being is everywhere. The being is without location. The being is the vastness. The being is the aliveness. The being is true essence nature. And being is shared by all beings. When any being remembers true nature, there is a coming to the one being the being. Now, of course, it is natural to want to share, and it's natural for the being to express itself. Truth wants to express itself. And it's also natural for the character to want companionship and sharing. But as we deepen, we get to be beyond telling the stories. And we start to be a certain kind of companion, a companion in truth, a companion here that's to shake you, wake you, stir you, not a companion that's here, that's playing ego pattern ping pong, that doesn't want to rock the boat, doesn't want to say that because there's a fear of how it might be received, but also a kind of companionship that won't collaborate, where ego patternings are playing, a companionship that is such a depth of care and love that points by not collaborating, by inviting that if there are feelings coming up, if there is judgment coming up, if there is opinion coming up, then the invitation is always to come to the being and feel the feelings, feel what's happening in your own nervous system. We have to come to such an adeptness in being able to feel the aliveness of the nervous system, whatever is happening. Catch when something is spoken that's a projection, and come back in. See it. Feel the grace of seeing it. Feel the grace of noticing that an egocentric pattern was just playing. Feel the grace of being humbled within your own internal experience because you see some kind of superiority. You see some kind of inferiority. You see some kind of belief about another. You see that you think you know something about anything. Right? Feel the grace of feeling humbled. Feel the grace of laying down the burden. And be ready to catch it the next time that it attempts to come forward. The ego has created so many patterns of protection. And as we unfold into the remembering of freedom, the truth is that you already are divine wholeness. You already are whole. You already are the being that knows itself. You already are the pure consciousness. And this unfolding is this catching of all of the places that want to remain stuck, that want to turn away from truth. That in the remembering of what is true, that we are invited to keep seeing all of the ways that the mind projection keeps itself alive, and in the creation of the projection, it just creates another experience, right? We could say that consciousness knowing itself is absorbed in itself, the inward turning of consciousness, absorbed in itself, life living itself. But if consciousness projects outward, it creates an experience and it creates a reflection. And in a way, this is the cause and effect. This is the cycle of karma. So this invitation is to keep catching the places where karma is playing, where you can be lured into a situation where there's a collaboration. Remember, every ego is looking for an ally. Will you be the ally that collaborates? As soon as two beings have a conversation that is in any way judgmental, there's a collaboration happening. Right? Let's illuminate this. It's important. Life is playing itself out. The wisdom is pure intelligence. And there is a way that we are all playing characters for each other. Awareness is when there is an awareness of what's happening in the moment. In the moment, there can be a seeing of what is happening in the moment. Love just loves. Love just loves. And this whole unfolding, in the deepest sense, is about remembering the love that just loves. The love is not competitive. The love is not comparing. The love is not inferior or superior. The love is not conditioned. The love knows no bounds. The love just loves, and you are that love. Every being is longing to remember that love. And every being is dealing with a completely unique set of protections. But what you can be sure of is that every being is dealing with a unique set of protections. No one is exempt from that. We can come to the transcendent and come to the sense of being, and there is great beauty. If we did not have any obscurations, we would just be resting in the being. The reason that we don't just rest in the being once it has been recognized and once it is invited, or that we have just not always been resting in the being, is because of these obscurations. And these obscurations and these conditionings have given us the idea that we are something that we are not, that we are the person, we are the character, that we are the name, we are the story, and that we somehow are here with a personal journey. But none of it is true. And there's so many ways that we constantly can get hooked back in. The most profound, pure divine instruction is to be still and to watch. But in truth, who really is resting still and watching, right? The invitation is to be still and watch. This is how we catch, how we are aware of the arisings out of the unconscious. It's not that there won't be any. It's not that there shouldn't be any. There should. It's natural. It's the upwelling of the shadow lands. It's everything coming out of the unconscious into the light. So none of it is wrong. It's perfect. It's grace. The invitation is to keep watching as the awareness, to catch it. Oh, you see that thought. You see that judgment. You see that opinion. You see that thread that wants to pull you into entanglement. And you see it and you stop it right there, right? Within your internal experience. if we are not living in the knowing of love and shining as this love in every single moment, then there is still work ongoing. No one is exempt from it. No one is better than it. It is the way of the intelligence. It's the way that consciousness is patterned. And we're in the process of remembering that who you are is consciousness, right consciousness. This is what we are here for. We're remembering that who you are is consciousness, that you're not the somebody, you're not the person, you're not the story. You are pure, awake consciousness. And once you discover that you are consciousness, it's like you reveal yourself. You step into the light, you step into the flow of attraction. You reveal yourself as ready, let's say, but it's just the beginning. Just the beginning. And now the refinement. And the refinement is the real deep processing. It's not mental or psychological processing. It's the deep processing of all of the threads that want to pull the attention back, illuminating them, not collaborating with them in order to release them, so that then freedom that is known in being the pure consciousness can deepen and deepen. We could say that consciousness can in its remembering, be more and more fully absorbed in itself, in the remembrance of itself, until it remembers itself out of consciousness, that the remembering of itself is so deep that it no longer needs the play of consciousness, because the knowing of its own purity has come to the remembering of a depth of wholeness. Even then, there are still threads that will refine and refine. Never think this is done. The whole sense of the immeasurable, unfathomable, infinite, eternal, is that it is a never-ending unfolding. That it cannot be fathomed, it cannot be measured, it cannot be understood. The moment is only ever now. There is only what is. And so there has to be a mind to think that I've got somewhere, this is where I am, I've arrived somewhere. How much longer is this going on for? Whatever, there has to be a mind, because the truth just does not have the capacity to question itself. It's just here now, present. This is it. This is it. This is it. This is it. This, just this, just this, just this. The being is neutral. The being is simple. The being is love. The being is openness. The beingness is bliss. And it is the bliss of being that carries us into deeper and deeper clarity and allows the refinement to happen. And this is why we are given companionship and way showers, so that as we open into the remembrance that the patterns of egocentric behavior can be illuminated, so that we can keep on track. And what usually happens is that we create companionships that have such a love, that we will stay on track, because we want to keep the connection of love. because we know that connection of love is the love that we are. We know that it is the truth. It's recognizable. And so there is this grace in the intelligence that often brings a companionship where there is such a love that the feeling is, I will do anything to not lose this love. And that feeling is, I will do anything to know the love that I am. That's what it really is in truth, right? Because once we feel this depth of love, even though it's just pure love, once we feel this depth of love in companionship, where we recognize truth and such a grace, it's like we're on fire. We're on fire. We're in process. The light is shining on you, in you, as you. And everything is now conspiring in consciousness itself, because it's where consciousness has recognized itself, right? And the thing about this love is that it will shake. It will shake things. It will stir things. It will awaken. It will pull the rug out again and again and again. Because that is how deep the love is, right? Because what it is one love that will do anything for itself, right? Mm-hmm. A love that only wants to love, only wants all of itself in love. And that love is patient. And that love is so kind. And that love is pure, boundless compassion. And it is the love alive in the heart that pulls us in. It allows us to have the courage, to have the steadfastness to remain when these patterns that are conditioned, and they're dense and they're strong in their well-worn grooves and their beliefs and their concepts. And so it takes a power as big as love, true love, to overcome all of the distractions and all of the seeming fears and anxieties and stresses. It is the recognition of the love that you are. It is the recognition of the heart that is pure love. And of course, this love is God. This love is divinity. And it is a light, an alive brilliance, an effulgence. And it is such a pull. But we have to keep on track that pull is being pulled into itself and isn't getting lost by the wayside, right? So we keep pointing and pointing and pulling back, keeping aligned in the being, in the neutral, simple being, in the perfect presence. And we receive the grace of every invitation that points to the possibility that there could be some patterns that are attempting to sabotage and distract. The invitation to be still and watch, as the recognition that you are awareness deepens. You are awareness, and awareness is ever aware. And as awareness that is ever aware, you see everything. You're in perfect presence in every moment. Whatever is happening, it's seen. So we're deepening in this remembering of being perfect aware presence that sees in the moment. And if it doesn't see in the moment, then the dawning will come, right? And then it's just to see in the moment. It's the same. When the dawning comes, it's to see, to see, to see, and to be humbled by the ways and the subtleties that these kind of patterns can come in, where judgments, opinions, distractions, and this play can, the Maya, the sticky Maya, can hook the attention. But as soon as the concealment is seen in the light of awareness, it's to receive the grace and to be humbled and to burn in that humbling if it's necessary, to feel gratitude for the burning. And the more that we burn and the more that we feel gratitude for the burning, in a way, more gratitude comes for the burning, almost like a longing for these places to be revealed. We can long for it all just to be revealed. Show me it all. But the kindness is that we just get revealed what we're really, truly ready for. And even that can seem like a lot, right? We could neither handle the whole Shadowland being revealed in one go, nor could we handle the whole wholeness being revealed in one go. We're kind of burning somewhere in between. And yet, we are the divine wholeness. Even the Shadowlands, yes, it is part of the divine wholeness. And yet what is in process is all of those Shadowlands being revealed, illuminated. This is what is in process. We're in the process of this incredible awakening in consciousness, let's say. And that awakening of consciousness, of course, is the collective consciousness. It's the one consciousness. It's the awakening happening in the one consciousness that is in delusion. The one consciousness that is in delusion, in separation, is awakening to God, is awakening to the remembering of divine wholeness. And we could say on a certain level, maybe we're all playing our part in that perfectly, intelligently, being carried. And to truly play our part in that, it is to receive the call to awaken, to receive the invitation, to receive the graced invitation to say yes. And to keep saying yes, because even if it feels like a wholehearted yes, in the process of refinement, there will be moments of forgetting, of abandoning yourself, of abandoning the love of God. But the great glory is that the love of God never forgets you, never, nor has it ever. You are the love of God. You are the living love of God. And everything is conspiring for the remembrance. At some point, the holy moment, the holy revealing is that the great misunderstanding just gives itself up in utter surrender. It's like the great misunderstanding just waves that white flag because you already are. You already are divine wholeness. You already are all that you could ever be. None of this that we are speaking of is a doing. It's about seeing through the obscurations and the seeming veils that aren't even really there. And this happens through remembering the presence of being, the presence of love, and through feeling the longing for God in the heart, longing, because the longing is pure. The desiring and the wanting in the external is not, but it's all a symptom of the true longing. So the invitation is to follow the longing, follow the aliveness, follow the pull into the love of God, into the call for truth, to feel the felt sense of being that is the direct experience of your own holiness in this moment. What glory that we can just come to the depth of presence and directly experience the holiness, the love, and the simplicity of true nature right now. And then with this knowing in place, the alive, intelligent knowing in place, which is the moment, the ever-present, timeless moment, we just rest here as the shining light, just being, life living itself. And in a way, just keep illuminating every disturbance, every resistance, every judgment, every opinion, every thought, every conditioning that arises. We just see it as the light that illuminates it with no further judgment, no further opinion, no further agenda, where love just loves. Whatever comes forward, love just loves it. Love says, bring it all forward, because love already knows that it's all love. Everything that the mind thinks, this is bad about me, this is wrong with me, this is my story, these are my wounds, all of this is just armoring, it's just protection. None of it is actually here. And really, it's about, in the direct experience, coming to directly experience yourself without the belief that any of that is here. It's coming to see through all of the beliefs that you have about yourself, to come to be empty of beliefs, empty of concepts, and discover that when you are empty of beliefs and concepts, that God is here, love is here. Who you thought you were is not here, but the glory is here. Everything that was ever longed for is right here, and you are that. You are one with that. It's all there is. So we could even say, to say you are one with that is even a hair of separation. There is only that, only that. And this is the discovery that is in every heart, shining as the longing, shining as the being, shining in presence, shining as the light that is guiding itself, calling itself into the remembering of truth. And as the awareness, being aware of everything that you are not, everything that you think you are, and everything that tries to pull the attention. Love cannot collaborate with separation, because love knows there is no such thing. Love just loves. The glory just shines. The wholeness is ever whole. And in this is ever singing the silent song of the glory, ever bringing forward yet another glorious invitation. Ever patient, ever kind. Ever an invitation to merge into remembrance, where the great misunderstanding just gives itself up. Holy, 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 the true power of love divine, love pure, love perfect, love whole. Now this that is all there has ever been. This perfect moment is just perfect love. And you are that. You are that right now. And yet there is a play that when the mind thinking, when the mind consciousness identifies with itself, when it identifies with a pattern of limitation, it brings a feeling of believing in limitation, right? So this is why the invitation inward consciousness, into your self-consciousness, into the remembering of absorption in yourself, that as soon as you direct your attention outward consciousness, then you are creating experience and a reflection. When you create experience and a reflection, what you will find consciousness is that the reflection will reflect something for to be seen, and how it can be seen is in the light of awareness, and it can be felt in the resonance of the nervous system, because the nervous system consciousness is just your amazing ability to know yourself and to feel your own frequency. That this whole opening consciousness that we speak of as awakening in God is about remembering the fineness of the frequency. That really what God is a very fine frequency of light. And it's coming to remember this very fine frequency of light that is resonating within itself. And as it is resonating within itself at this fine frequency, this is the frequency of God, of wholeness. And so we are undoing the denser frequencies. We're refining and refining the denser frequencies. And of course, this is all in service to the whole, that there is only one in service to itself. And that is consciousness, consciously awakening and remembering its own purity, falling into a deeper and deeper absorption so that it can resonate as a pure vessel, as light, as love, as the emanation of the wholeness. There is only one, so that one is all moving. The seeming parts are all moving as one intelligence, one wholeness that has never left itself. And so when consciousness comes to feel itself as consciousness, it's an alignment inward into an inner absorption, where the remembering of the flow of intelligence, the felt sense of pure knowing, the flow of pure intelligence is this flow of divine attraction. It's the flow of consciousness into divine remembrance. And this remembrance is opening to the finer and finer frequencies in order for transmutation to happen of the denser frequencies, and the clearer, purer the vessel, which is the being that is resting in the being, resting in itself, the more transmutation can happen in the silence. And this transmutation in the silence is true healing. It's true transformation. It's not healing in a worldly sense, and yet it will impact the surface of life. But the true healing that happens in silence is the refinement of the denser frequencies into the finer and finer frequencies. And in that refining the nervous system, which is the remembering of consciousness, remembering itself, remembering what it is, consciousness, remembering what you are, right? Consciousness remembering itself as the intelligence and resonating more and more finely, remembering the purity, remembering the divinity, opening and opening. And what that looks like on the surface of life is meeting life, and the ability that gets smoother and smoother to keep meeting all of the places that can be hooked, and to keep transmuting everything that feels to be personal, everything that feels to be a trigger or a resistance, everything that seems to be a pain or a tension or a holding, to keep transmuting in the silent presence everything as a resonance. Being the vehicle, the vessel for healing. Consciousness is really devouring itself. As it devours itself, it doesn't leave a trail behind it. It's like it turns into its true self, and everything that it thought it was disappears. And yet, there's still the ability as conscious, as the finest vibration, the finer and finer frequencies can access as awareness, the denser frequencies can see that, can feel that, but are never ever touched by that, right? Only when if identification happens, can the denser frequencies feel sticky and burdensome. But the more refined the frequency of the nervous system, of the consciousness, the purification, the refinement that's happening, it eventually comes to a point where it cannot be touched. Cannot be touched. And when it cannot be touched, it can be a vehicle for more of the transmutation of the collective, we could say. All frequencies are being transmuted naturally in the wisdom, in the intelligence of consciousness, are being transmuted in the silence, in the deep focus, silence of being, in the openness. Consciousness is awakening to the remembrance of its purity. And as consciousness remembers its purity, it refines and transmutes It acts as a vehicle for transmutation. And that whole process is like consciousness feasting on apparent resistance and denser frequencies, feasting upon it all in the knowing of the true essence nature, and in the feasting, transmuting it into the remembering of bliss, the remembering of love. There is an intelligence that is moving everything. There is a perfection in absolutely everything. And yet there is this glory in the moment, the ever-present moment of illuminating anything and everything that is here ready, coming from the subconscious, whether it is being seen in the light of awareness or whether it is being transmuted through the nervous system as sensation, as seemingly denser frequencies or resistance, whatever it is, conditionings. It's this incredible intelligence that is the aliveness of life living itself. And so this is where, as we come to be the being the aliveness of life living itself, and in the knowing of being, nothing else is needed. Nothing is separate. There's no division. It does not matter if there is a collective consciousness that is in corruption and distortion. It does not matter. There's not even really the seeing of that in truth, right? Because it's not really there. But where there's a sense of that in the direct experience and the ability to feel the denser frequencies as consciousness is still in the process of remembering itself, is to know that the whole is one intelligence, one wisdom. It's all happening in one consciousness. There is no personal, there is no separation, there's no need to divide, there's no better, there's no worse. Your internal experience is your internal experience. And it's either an experience of personhood that's divided, or it's a direct experience of being, of the holiness. So if the direct experience is an experience of any kind of conditioning, judgment, separation, resistance, then that's the work. That is the work to see through the mind, to keep meeting the mind consciousness through sensation in the nervous system and illumination in awareness. There can be no collaboration in story. There's no army of light workers that is separate from God, right? As a seeming light worker or a being that knows this truth, you are one in God. And the power is resting in the knowing that there is only one, and the humility and compassion that is here, that sees only the same one in all beings, that is not judging anyone, not feeling better than anyone, not feeling worse than anyone, less than or more than, is not making anyone wrong. To know that when any of that arises, it's an invitation to go into your own divided personal experience and find out through being with the resonances what is ready to let go, and then to be the vehicle for that transmutation to happen. It is to remember too that in this wisdom we need certain characters to act in certain ways in order to bring forward what is in the unconscious. So if we are judging the characters, we might be missing this incredible opportunity not to be concerned about the character, not to be concerned about anything that's on the surface of life, to only be concerned with the direct experience of whether you're having a personal, resistant, stirred experience or judging experience, a limited experience, a stress reaction, or whether you are resting in the being. The invitation to be still and watch in order to receive the grace of every possibility that comes forward, the grace of every possibility to know yourself more deeply. And to know yourself more deeply requires a knowing of all of yourself. And it requires like a facing of the mind in order to see through the mind, a facing of the mind, a facing of the conditionings, a facing of all that the mind can believe itself to be, in order to remove through the light of awareness shining the delusion of the mind, to see through the delusion. We can only see through the delusion if we meet all that is happening through the mind, in the mind consciousness. This willingness to be still and truly watch. Watch what is happening inside. Watch the thoughts, watch the story, watch the reaction, watch the pattern. The learned way has been to distract, to numb, to ignore, deny, and to hide from everything that we have imagined was painful. And so when any little inkling of this that we have believed to be painful arises, we can go into the fear response and the feelings to use the strategies to get away from that. But the truth is that if we can meet whatever is arising that is imagined to be painful, or even that feels painful, feels hard, if we can meet it and feel the sensations, if we cannot use the strategies to try to get away, what we discover is that peace is right here, and peace comes. Peace comes. Love comes, because it is the true nature. And when we stop running, when we stop hiding, when we stop numbing, we discover that peace is here, love is here. And every taste of this is a remembering of the true essence nature. Consciousness remembering itself, remembering to turn inward and rest absorbed in itself. And that this is freedom, this is holiness, and that all that is ever being invited or pointed to is of such utter simplicity, and yet the mind is so unwilling or unable, let's say. It's not a doing of the mind, but it takes a certain readiness, resolve, vigilance, courage, strength, and a knowing of the being to be able to rest and face yourself when all of the strategies are activated and reaction and resistance is coming forward. To be able to remain and just to truly watch. But every time there is a remaining and a feeling the sensation and a discovery that, oh, it actually works. It actually works to remain, feel the feelings, the sensations, rest as the being, and peace comes, love comes, the remembering comes. It's about resting in the presence of now. And as the openness, where the whole moment is allowed to just be as it is, what is, right? The great relaxation of all of the strategies of identification and just a watching and a feeling, a being. The remembering comes. And every time the remembering comes and is tasted, the resolve and the vigilance, the courage grows, the strength grows. The remembering to be with yourself, to be the loving presence that all the exiled, pushed away parts of yourself need in order to emerge out of the shadowlands and into the remembering of wholeness. To rest in the perfect peace of being, in the perfect love of God, in this moment just as it is, the openness, the silence, the stillness. And to recognize the remembering, and that the remembering is like a resonance. It's like an aliveness in consciousness. It's still and it's silent, and yet the aliveness is the knowing. It's the alive knowing where consciousness is conscious of itself. Comes an aliveness of the intelligence. So resting here now in the simple silence of being, recognizing in direct experience that the being is neutral, is light, is openness. There's an aliveness of the intelligence here, and the aliveness of intelligence is the aliveness of consciousness knowing itself, and the knowing is that flow of intelligence. This flow of intelligence can only be known when consciousness is resting in the finer, pure frequency of the knowing of itself, absorbed in itself. Cannot be known where the mind denser frequency is acting like I know something. And so this is why it is just to let go of everything that has ever been learned. Everything. That it has no relevance in truth. It may be that there is partial truth in what has been learned, but you do not need to hang on to it, because as there is a deeper opening into whole truth, everything that you learned that is true is right here. Have absolute open access to the whole field of divine intelligence and the flow of creative intelligence. It's all here in this perfect moment, this perfect love. It's all here. Creativity, pure creativity, is actually even before creation. Pure truth, let's say, is before intelligence, right? The intelligence is born out of truth. Creation is born out of pure creativity. Everything is born out of love, but it never becomes anything. It's always just love. It's always just divine wholeness. And the whole unfolding is this incredibly graced, wise unfolding. Every being is exactly where the consciousness needs to be, always as part of the whole field of consciousness that is in the process of awakening out of the delusion into the remembering of God, of divine wholeness. So resting here in the silence, in the stillness, absorbed in the light, in the fine frequencies. Feel the frequency. It's all that's known. All awareness is aware of is itself, and it's aware of itself just as a resonance, just as a frequency. Nothing else is really truly known. Resting in the purity, resting in the love, resting in the humility and compassion, knowing nothing, being no one. And to feel the grace of just not needing any of that. Just feeling the beauty of a heart that is perfect peace, wide open and clear. You do not need to be seen or validated by anyone or anything external. Just to know this in the heart. We could say the need for validation gets replaced by just a meeting of yourself in all beings. A recognition, a meeting in love, in this truth. And when it's known inside, it does not matter if the being in front of you is resting in the same depth or is completely veiled. It does not matter, because when you know the love that you are, when you know the being that you are, you see only that love, that being right before you. When there's a knowing of the divine, you see only that divine in front of you. There's never a sense of less than or more than. No sense of of needing anything. There's just a meeting in love, a falling in love with love, exactly as it is shining before you. And if anything arises that feels like there is separation when you are faced with another being in front of you, and just feel what is happening inside you until your veils disappear and you see only love before you. When you see only love before you, you do not need to protect, you do not need to hide, and you do not need to be seen, you do not need validation. You do not need to be loved from the external, because you know the love that you are. And so it is to stand before every being, and if it feels like there's anything in the way of that knowing, that shining, then meet everything that is in your internal experience that acts as a veil to that love, until all that remains is that love. And this is the process of refinement, really, until the seeing is just of yourself, the same one, the same love. To not imagine that it is the fault of anything external, but it is just a clue, a sign that there is something inside that is protected. And so removing the protections. If there's a single thought about another that has any kind of flavor of negativity or judgment or opinion, it's to find out, what is that protection within you? What is that within you? Can you meet that place that is keeping you protected and away from the fullness of love shining? Because what you can be sure of, and you can in a way check this within your direct experience of love, is that love is never anything other than bright shining love. So the invitation to keep meeting yourself, meeting yourself, meeting yourself, meeting yourself, feeling the felt sense of being, and then meeting anything and everything that seems to obscure the clarity, anything that seems to dull, and to know that it's never the fault of anything external, ever. It's never the fault of anyone or anything. It is purely the intelligence revealing that there is a protection ready to come forward into love, into wholeness. And it is just inviting your presence to be present with yourself, to meet the protection and open to the love that you are, the beauty that you are, unprotected, the wide open heart. So just resting in the stillness, in the silence, to feel the resonance of just being pure awake awareness, pure being. Feel the resonance and just drinking in the finer frequency drinking in the finer frequency of remembrance, the bliss of being yourself, natural, open, simple, immaculate being. The purity that we seek is right here. And there is innocence here. When we come to discover our own innocence, our own goodness, when we truly know this, we know the innocence and goodness of all beings in the one heart of being. To discover your own innocence, to open to the love that you are, that loves and that is compassion. Sometimes the hardest place to open to is to discover the love that you are through loving yourself and having such compassion for yourself. But only as we can open to a sense of self-love and self-compassion can we open through that to discovering that you are the love, you are the compassion, you are the purity and the innocence. And so every time that we meet a tender place, a protection, to just stay so present with it until it gives itself up. And sometimes it can take a short while, sometimes it can take years. And it doesn't matter, because this is a timeless now. It is an eternal being. All that matters is nothing, just being. Resting in the beauty and the peace of the open heart. And to feel the simple happiness, the simple causeless joy that is here. There can be delight here, wonder, awe here. It does not all have to be here, but just whatever the resonance is of being the being, the openness, that there is a simple contentment. In just being.